Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
You silence the doubters. You get the best tools. You work with the right people. You look to the future and bust through.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today we have a special guest with us. We have Ken Keis joining us to talk about one of my favorite subjects ever. So before we get started and I leave you on that hook, I want to introduce our special guest today. Ken Keis is a Ph.D. He is a global authority on behavior assessment strategies, expert in leadership, purpose, and wellness. He's an author, speaker, podcast host, and brownie points. He comes from a farming background. So welcome, Ken.
Well, good to be with you, Tracy.
I am excited to chat with you. I opened up saying this is one of my favorite subjects ever, and it really is. We are going to be talking about personality types in this episode titled, Why Aren't You More Like Me? Who doesn't think that about everybody we know, right?
Well, of course, and it's the title of my book, so I do have a bias about liking that title. So we'll go with it. And yes, my farming background was I grew up on a dairy farm, and I also had my own dairy farm. So both sides of the ledger there.
Right on. I want to bring this amazing body of work to our agriculture industry and our listeners here of the Impact Farming Show. Many, many years ago, back in the corporate world, I took, and I hope it's okay to say it, the DISC assessment, Ken.
Not out loud. You never want to use that word out loud. But anyways, That's fine. You have already. We're done.
Yeah, okay. Then the D word going forward. I did the D.
Right.
We got to be careful there. I did the DISC assessment many years ago, and it was in a context for my job, for sales, for marketing, for leadership. And I must say, learning about the different personality types has really transformed my personal relationships and my business relationships. And I am really excited for you to come on and talk about your assessment. And most importantly, I want our audience to know this stuff as a tool to transform our personal relationships and our farm family relationships. So welcome. Can you do a little bit more of an introduction about yourself and we'll dive right in?
Well, you betcha. Well, I grew up on a dairy farm. I'm the firstborn male, third generation, Eastern European descent. So, Tracy, there was a little bit of pressure for me to stay on the farm. And of course, when I left the farm, what was I called? A traitor, right? I betrayed the family. That being said, I went into working with the Federal Department of Agriculture and then actually an ag sales rep, where my diploma in nutrition and genetics I actually was a subsidiary of Pioneer Grain out here on the West Coast. So I was mostly working with those that were doing crops, as well as dairy farmers. And so that was the sort of my first part of my life. And then in the late 80s, I left or started my own sales training franchise. So I left my sales job to start a sales training franchise. I still had the dairy farm, but the two just conflicted. I was constantly traveling and starting to do presentations all around the world, and it just didn't really work to still have the dairy farm. I enjoyed the dairy farm, but I got up one morning and I said, listen, if I'm here 20 years from now, would that be okay? And I said, absolutely not, because I was growing up. My purpose in life is to help others to live, lead, and work on purpose. So when we're recording this is my 32nd year in doing professional development. And all of us that have grown up in families, and I've done a lot of work in family businesses in all sectors, from automotive to retail to farming, is that we all have different personalities, or we show up differently. And if you have a sibling or other family members, you said, are they exactly like you? And that usually they're not. So intuitively, we know that there are these differences. So I started in sales training, and then I got connected to the company that I'm currently own consulting research group. In 1990, got connected with the founder. The founder had created the company and our first tool, the personal style indicator. In 1979, 1980, because we actually disliked DISC, that's why, Tracy, we were talking about that. And we wanted to create something that really served the learner better from a learner perspective for our psychology courses and students. And so here we are 41 years later, 30 countries, 13 different languages, and we just serve the global audience. So I progressed to move from being a sales trainer into leadership to now I bought CRG 20 years ago and have been doing the certification of other professionals globally for that 20 years, co-author of the assessment and also co-author of the book, Why Aren't You More Like Me? So it's really been, this has been my space. I've done over 3,000 paid presentations, 1,000 of them being on this content. So when somebody says there's no such thing as personality, there's no way you can convince me that that is a true statement. Every single person on the planet, that's why you're so passionate about it, Tracy, has a personal style, as we call it, or as others call it, a personality. And the last research is that still, in spite of all the tools that have been around, are you an animal, a dog, a cat, a lion, or whatever, or some kind of letter, or some kind of color, still 70% of the population has never really been exposed to this. And, you know, you and I know Elaine Fraze very well, and Elaine's one of our certified consultants that works with the tools. And she said, when we think about farm families or any kind of business, what is really the number one issue? It's really about relationships. It's not about how you plow the field or how you cultivate it. Yeah, we can argue about how much chemicals we're going to put on, or if we're going to go organic or non-organic, whatever. But usually those differences come between people. And so when we think about leadership, and as farms become sophisticated, you know, as a graduate of an agricultural college years ago, you know, farms are getting bigger. They're getting more sophisticated, usually having more staff. You know, when I grew up on the dairy farm, I mean, we were milking 60, and then we went to 80, then we went to 100, then we went to 140. And now, if you're 140 dairy cows in Canada, at least in the West Coast or the western part of Canada, that's just like a minuscule farm now. I mean, the neighbors across the street are now 340. There's somebody else around 600. The largest dairy in Canada, which is the Coimans, are just, 20 minutes from where I live, which are 3,500 or something like that. Now I have employees. I have people. I have to hire people. I have to work with people. And when we think about that, everything has to do with this relationship. And every single person on the planet, no matter what your culture, what your background, has a personal style, or as others call, a personality.
I love it. I love it. I love it. This is my jam, this stuff. I love it, Ken. And I've been doing this show for coming on 3 years. And I've had this
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I've had this idea to do a show on personality types this whole time. And I'm like, okay, where can I fit it in? And now we are doing a big series about transition planning. Planning for the farm to go to the next generation, but we're focused on communication right now. And to me, I know a lot of farm families, and even knowing personality type information for quite some time, I've been learning and growing. And I go, how many farm families out there, I don't care if it's mom, dad, son, daughter, I don't care about the dynamics. If they knew this stuff, could they relate so much better to their farm family members that they're not only family with, but they have to work with? And it adds a whole level of stress, right? So I'm pretty pumped about bringing this to the audience.
Well, it's interesting. I do believe it's a market that's underserved.
Yep.
And even though farming, I had one of the first computer feeders for cattle with my little herd of 30 way back in the 80s when it was just coming out. Now, if you don't have, mixed rations, all computerized, you're just like a nobody. Have we actually taken that same approach to create sophistication for the people side? And the challenge is no. Now, farming's not just on its own. One of our other clients serves the blue collar sort of marketplace, electricians, plumbers, landscapers, which really can fit into the sort of farming mindset too. Well, the reality is, again, a high percentage, because they have, let's say, less than 100 people working for them, they haven't been in this space. They don't have an HR department or a personnel department. like you were in a corporate world where somebody was saying, okay, Tracy, take this assessment.
Yes.
I believe it's one of the disservices. Now, there was a study done by Talent Smart, which is one of our competitors, a few years ago. And they said, what percentage of people can realize their potential without this knowledge? And their number is 2%. That means 1 out of 50 people will realize the potential without it. And here's why. Every single interaction in life is involving personal style or personality. So here's our definition of it. I know it was one of your questions you wanted answered. Mm-hmm. Our definition of personal style is your natural predisposition, meaning you're born to perceive, approach, and interact with the environment, which includes time, people, tasks, and situations. Now, you probably know somebody, Tracy, that no matter what, they are always late. And there's just no consciousness of time or whatever. Then there are some people, no matter what, they're always on time. You know, you're in Saskatchewan, it's 12 feet of snow, the wind's blowing, everything's icy, and they're 20 minutes early. And, how's that possible, right? So there's not a right or a wrong. We just have natural predispositions. Now, we have a model called Personality Development Factors Model, and we don't have an image here on the screen to show people. But we have many factors that contribute who we are. Biophysical. If you didn't get any sleep last night, you're going to be more grouchy. Self-worth levels, was your esteem built up? Your culture, different sort of expectations culturally. Input, meaning, how were relationships modeled for you? If you've never seen a good communications model, how would you even be able to do it? Emotional anchors. One of my family members is an adult child of an alcoholic who was abused as a child. So that person, even later in life, is still carrying that luggage. And so all of these factors contribute to my personhood. And personal style or personality, as other people call it, is one part of that. Now, so the question is, am I nature, born a certain way, or am I nurture? Does my environment shape me? Ooh. And the answer is what, Tracy?
I would say both.
Oh, winner, okay. 100% on the exam. Okay. So we're both. So we have this nature, we have this nurture. Now, one of the things we believe is your personal style, these preferences about how you like to interact with the world of people and things, stays pretty consistent throughout your lifetime. And here's why this is important. If this was not true, tomorrow morning, Tracy, you could not count on Tracy being Tracy tomorrow morning. You would have different interests, you have a different orientation, you had a different preferences. And so this is foundational to building my life. There's a theme, an essence, preferences that stay consistent throughout my lifetime so I can count on me being me. Now, I mature, I grow, I educate myself, I get experience. If I'm consciously unaware, then I'm really this accident waiting to happen in terms of relationships. And if we look at any leadership, because my Ph.D. is in leadership and management, if we look at any leadership research, what are some of the main reasons that leaders fail? Well, the top 2 reasons that leaders fail is a lack of interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence. And number 2 is hubris, arrogance. I don't need that stupid stuff. I've got 12 sections I'm doing here. Why do I need to worry about, what your personality is, Tracy? So this arrogant stuff or hubris stuff, we need to get that aside. In interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence, being aware and conscious that my behavior is constantly having impact with all the people around me. Is it positive? Is it negative? Do you remember the saying, I don't know if you're old enough, Tracy, to remember the saying, kids are to be seen, not
heard. Yeah.
Who created that? I can be a verbal person. I'm actually balanced in our model. But I was constantly said when I was growing up by my father that, Ken, you talk too much. Well, what? Who's judging that? Compared to what? Because you like a little bit less verbalness. Now I get paid to do it, excuse me, and host my own podcast, do all these kinds of things. Verbalness is my gifting. It's my skill. It's my ability to articulate concepts. And Dad saying, oh, guess what? Shut up. So my esteem actually when I was growing up was low. When I came back from ag college to work together as a personal experience, as somebody that has passion in this marketplace, just as you do, we just fought constantly because there was no legitimate communications. And I still remember where Dad was kind of like, and by the way, he's still alive at the time of recording of this at 89, and I love him. But he only did the best that he could in what he knew. And that was the old style of management. Do as I say, not as we communicate. There's not a collaboration. Or he would completely acquiesce and, oh, go do whatever you want. Well, that's not what I wanted. We want to have an interactive, respectful communication style with each other. And the reality is when we have differences in our personality, we have different needs. We have different orientations. Again, not right, not wrong. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, you're better than me. No, I'm just different than you. So in these differences, there's another statement we say is that either you're in charge of your style or your style's in charge of you.
Powerful.
So you know, in the DISC model or the personal style model that we have, or True Colors or Extended DISC or some of these other ones, there's 4 quadrants, right? And so most people are familiar with that we have these 4 different dimensions that make up who we are. One of our distinctives is that the majority of people are blends of these different quadrants.
Yes.
Of these, what we call dimensions. So when people were using animals, are you a lion or an otter? The reality is 90% of the population, based on our data, is a blend of multiple dimensions or multiple animals or multiple colors, whatever. So describing myself as red or just as the Terminator is not respectful to the majority of the population. And so that's why a lot of people get confused. And I like simple and easy to understand, but I don't like cute because it it discounts the importance of this information.
Yes, I hear you. And, you know, to me, I think you hit the nail on the head. And why I want to bring this episode to our audience is we're working with our family day in and day out on a farm family operation. And it's funny, we think we know the people that we're around all the time. And we do, but it's kind of funny how much we don't know them. Or if we're ignorant to our personality, we're letting our personality drive our interactions. And it's funny, you know, I did the DISC assessment 20 plus years ago, Ken, and I'm still learning and looking at my family. My spouse, where I'm this, he's the opposite. And I come at a situation in that interaction with me. And finally, and for our audience too, if you're son or daughter working with your dad and you want respect or you're trying to push a point, but dad needs to step away, right? That's where the power is in this stuff, is just knowing you and the other person.
Absolutely. So we have sort of generational overtones. We have cultural overtones, but then we also have personal style that is this anchor point. So again, it's this natural predisposition. So we're born a certain way to perceive, approach, and interact with the environment, which is time, people, tasks, and situations. So true story. So we were doing all the training for Chrysler Canada for nearly a decade. And we're doing, we have a full day course based on my book, Why Aren't You More Like Me? And we're getting into the end of the day. And the one individual says, well, now I understand why I hate my job. And he says, what do you mean you hate your job? So he was the service manager at this organization. So he was responsible for the service advisor, all the techs. He was interacting with the parts department and all the customers. And he says, you know what? I hate people. I said, well, hang on. I says, what do you mean hate people? Well, he was a technician who was promoted into this position of people. So he is moving from tasks over the people, and he wasn't conscious. Now, when I bought CRG 20 years ago, many times people, when they have these other tools out there, they're thinking that taking the tool is really to help me to understand others. And I've grown to think that this really is not the priority. The priority is to get me to understand myself. Okay. There was a study done by Dr. Tasha York. She wrote in New York Times bestsellers called Insight. And she was talking about the number one skill in the world today to really be successful is called self-awareness. And in her study, she said, what percentage of people believe that they know themselves, how they come across, and you know how you see me, Tracy, and my opinion of self is Tracy's going to agree with my opinion of self about how I show up and how my behaviors are experienced by you. So 95% of people believe that they knew themselves. I said, what are you talking about? I said, really? You think so? Okay. So then she had her students go out and interview people around the people who were part of the research and said, what percentage of people agree with Ken's opinion of self? In other words, congruent. And it was only 10%.
Wow.
So part of the problem is that people don't know that they don't know that they don't know. They're completely oblivious that their behavior is having a negative impact in the environment and how they say and how they talk and how they react and how they respond, and they don't even know that they don't know. So what we're trying to do when you use assessments such as the personal style indicator or what you had taken is to help to create some consciousness and awareness of who you are first. Now, for me, where I've shifted in this is that it's a validation of self. With family businesses, and if anybody's written or read Stanley's book on the millionaire next door, right, is that only 10% of businesses, family businesses, make it to the third generation.
Yes.
Now, there are many reasons why. There is, the passion and purpose of the founder is not what the kids want. There is this side where the skills and capability of the next generations are not the same. And then the final one, of course, is entitlement. Just because it's in the family, I should get it. And his stories in there are just disgusting and what people expect from the family because I was born into it. So that being said what can I do to be able to increase my success in life? I need to understand who I am. Now, the power in relationships is not to be self-centered, but to be self-honoring. So I know who I am. I know that I'm a pretty intense, outgoing, outspoken individual. It's the professions that I've been in. As an inspector, as a sales rep, I had the highest retention rate in the entire company because I love relationships, but I also like getting things done. But don't ask me to be the accounting auditor in your company. It's just going to be a disaster, right? So one of the reasons people need to take these assessments is for self-honoring and self-validation so that I can communicate what I want to do and what my strengths are. There's more and more research that I need to play to my strengths. Now, not every family business or business has an opportunity for members of a family to do everything that they want to do. But how can I craft roles and responsibilities that fit my strengths, but also fit my gifts, talents, and interests, which are separate measures? Any of these assessments that say you should go into this career based on this profile, we don't agree with that. It's discriminatory because it doesn't measure interests. However, how I want to go about the business. So one of the things you're equipping people to do by completing these types of assessments is helping people to say no as much as yes. I remember working with a large retail chain. You would know who it is, as I said, but I won't say it on air. 6,000 employees. They had one of their top performers was this woman who was in their cosmetic department. And they constantly wanted to promote her to be a supervisor of her area. She was number one in the company of 6,000 employees. And I said, have you not listened to her? She does not want to be the supervisor. Would you just stop trying to promote her? So this whole concept of being upwardly mobile, to being promoted, having more responsibility does not always fit every person. And a lot of times people out of ego, arrogance, or pride will say yes to more responsibility, and really they're not equipped, they're not ready, nor really it's their wheelhouse. When I did my MBA research, which is an international business, what was an interesting finding I didn't anticipate is that people's job satisfaction went down as they were promoted.
Absolutely.
Being more responsibility, more expectations. Most of us in this field have heard of the Peter Principle, where you get promoted into incompetence. And so I might be a really good milker, but I'm probably not a very good supervisor of the milkers if it's a large herd, let's say. Or other things where I could understand how to kind of do buy and sell things, but I really shouldn't be doing the bookkeeping because I can't, reconcile the accounts. I'm just giving you some examples. Mm-hmm. So as a family, we need to feel confident and communicate clearly what are the strengths that I bring. So the research around strengths, I need to mostly play to my strengths. But first of all, I need to know what they are. I need to know what yours are, because the flip side then is that next part of understanding others. So one of the things we get people to do when they complete the personal style indicator, Tracy, is not only do I read my in-depth interpretations, which we honor with blends, what we call patterns, the combinations that work for you, of the different numbers or the different letters. And then from there, I read yours. And what I want to do is understand what's important to you. So no style is better than another. They are simply different. And contrary to what some people believe, every style has stuff, right?
Yep.
So I know you wanted to talk about the dimensions a little bit, and we can go into that, but where would you like to go from here?
Well, I wanted to say that I took your assessment, and to me, this knowledge, not only does it help you know yourself better and do better, but sometimes there's things we love about our personality and other parts where we go, why are we like this? I can't seem to break this. And I think for many people, when they're sitting there going, why am I like this? And they don't have a tool like yours to come in and go, because this is who you are. When I went through and did the assessment, Ken, even at this stage in my game, I went, oh, right, this is me. Right? Mm-hmm. That is a trait. That is my personality. So I absolutely would love for you to share some of the different personalities. Share a little bit of the information. Sorry.
The other thing that's important, just before we get into that, is a lot of people say, I don't need an assessment. Well, who would allow you to drop your weed off until you've done a moisture test?
Yeah.
And so do you say, no, I'm just guessing it's 30% or 20 or whatever it is. Or I used to do a bunch of samples of feed to do at least, rations for farmers. Well, we tested it for protein and the magnesium, phosphorus, whatever it was. I sent it to a lab to get assessed to know what I needed to do. So why would we would never accept that in our own farms, but we would accept this with people? Mm-hmm. You would go to your doctor, you're sitting across the table or on the treatment table, and I just, you know what, Tracy, your blood pressure is 120 over 80. I don't have to put the blood pressure cuff on your arm. I said, what a quack. Get out of here. I don't need Dr. Keis. I'm gone. Yeah. So if we don't accept it in those parts of our life, why would we accept it with the most important part of our operations, which is the people side? And even if it's just two of you, just getting to understand yourself and to understand others. Now, one more comment before I get into the 4 dimensions. There's certain cultures that, and this was true for me, and my self-worth in high school was really, really low, is that because I was beat up for who I was, is this validation and honoring of self so that I can have my own esteem that I bring to the table. And as I mentioned before, from a self-honoring point of view, not from a self-centered point of view. But one of the other windows that comes in is that we can sometimes have this framework of guilt, meaning I feel guilty because I don't feel engaged in doing this. You've asked me to do it. I love the farm, but I just, like I'm ADHD, shiny object, creative avoidance. I don't want to do this. And I think sometimes we beat ourselves up for what we're not engaged in. I remember actually interviewing an HGTV star, and he said, I only have interest for those things I have an interest in.
Yes.
He says, I failed high school. I've had more shows on HGTV than any other person. He says, but I have certain things that I enjoy and I love. And the subjects I didn't love in high school, I failed, and that's why I was kicked out of high school, and now I'm a TV star. And so how's that? So That's really, in essence, as a metaphor, what we're trying to do here. Be aware of what you're good at. Yes, understand every strength has a related weakness. So let's just talk about the 4 dimensions briefly, knowing that 90% of the populations are blends. So our first one is behavioral action. So this is a person that is driven, goal-oriented, intense, and I'm going to give you a different definition of our model around introversion, extroversion, and that a little bit later on. Okay. So these individuals are task-oriented. They're extroverted in our model, and what we mean by that is that they see the environment as an opportunity to be influenced, because a red light in the city just is a suggestion to a behavioral action person. So red means yellow, yellow means green, green means go. So these individuals don't understand the word can't, no, impossible. And when a staff member or a team member or a family member says, well, we can't do that, it irritates them completely. The other thing is these people, one of their orientations is time, meaning they hate people that waste their time. They need pace. And so if you're not fast, if you're not quick, if you're not competent, then they'll diss you. Now, this also leads to the other side, which is what they have to manage. And that is that they're impatient. And because they're impatient, so this is the other side of the strength, is that they can be intimidating. So some of these individuals can be so intense when they walk in the room, everybody shuts up. They don't say anything, says, okay, what do we need to do today over here in the operation? And nobody says anything, because if they say something incorrectly, they could be shredded, right? So they back off, they don't say anything. Something comes up 2 days later and said, Ken, why didn't you say anything? He says, well, I was intimidated by you. You know how you show up? So they don't realize that when they just even show up in a room, their physical presence can intimidate other people. So the other thing for them to learn, when we talk about building credibility. So we don't ask people to change who they are, but we ask people, if you're going to build a relationship with people who are same or different than you, then you need to understand what Tracy needs. And out of emotional intelligence, interpersonal skills, and the opposite of being self-centered, I'm going to serve Tracy's needs before mine. I'm not changing who I am. I'm adjusting my approach because I care about you as a relationship. And I'm going to defer and set aside for a moment of time my needs and wants in deference to yours. It is the hardest thing to do as a person, as a human being, is because we're inherently self-centered. And somebody said, well, no, we're not. And so, well, just look around. It doesn't take very long to notice that. So that's that behavioral action, goal-oriented, see the future. They normally don't hold grudge. They move on. They don't think about stuff from the past because they're future-oriented. The cognitive analysis individual is also task-oriented, and they're verbal in our model and introverted. Now, this messes with people, because what we mean by introverted is that they're very careful and they're cautious. And sometimes it can be overly cautious, meaning they're more indecisive. They want to get more data. They want to get more information. And they can be the people that get so much information, they bring all the stuff to the site, but they never build anything. So their encouragement is to kind of get out of it. Now, they are gifted to see what's not there. They could be out of the 4 dimensions called the pessimist. And so as a result of that, if I have 100 words in an essay, 99 right, 1 spelt wrong, which one are they going to see? The one that's wrong.
Yep.
But if I bring that same narrative to the relationships, and the only thing I ever point out to you is when you screw up on the farm or in anything here to do with our business, then what is our relationship going to be like? Do I want to be around you? Now, here's the other side, which is really interesting about this group. Sometimes they can live in the past. So you messed up, Tracy, in the year 2000. Well, I still remember that. So they have to let go of that. They live sort of in the past, in the future. And so this is where they have to kind of let go of grudges. The other one is, even though they're introverted, because they have such a critical nature, they can leave blood on the side of the street. And we just encourage them just to bite their tongue and to try to be an encourager. They will, a lot of times, you think that the behavioral action person is a person who is a control freak. That's actually not true. The cognitive analysis person is the control freak because they get respect out of the quality of the work done, and nobody can do it better than them. Okay. What happens with behavioral action bosses or leaders or family members is because they value independence so much, they'll actually give independence to a new hire on the first day, says, yeah, go seed that section. They don't even know where the tractor or the seed is, right? So they'll give independence away to a fault, and they won't equip them to win. The cognitive analysis person will micromanage them to the point where I just don't want to be around you. Don't you trust me for anything? Now, the other side, not this to be a negative, is the high cognitive analysis C person really can be critical towards others, but they can give it, but they can't take it. So when we criticize them or give them feedback, they take that intensely personal, because part of their esteem comes out of the quality of the work that they do. And when they're seen that they're not doing quality work, it wounds them. So that's one thing to kind of be conscious of. Says, how did that affect them? I says, well, that's because they take that internally as part of that respect side for their own internal credibility. The other one is the affective expressive style, which is what mostly people call extroverted. But in our model, they're extroverted. They want to tell the environment what to do. They're verbal and they're people-oriented. So they're really not the most people-oriented. They're more oriented towards ideas. And because they're extroverted, they're trying to influence the environment. That environment includes people. And so they have verbal prowess to try and to influence you, Tracy, to my agenda. And now part of them is they're networkers, they're outgoing, they like people, they like to have 100 people or individuals as friends, more shallow. Cognitive analysis want to have a few friends deep. So affective expressive, the whole world is there. I have a friend. Well, they talked to them once in the last 2 years. That's sort of how they talk.
Yes.
The other thing about the affective expressive, they are the eternal optimist. So part of their challenge is because they truly believe in their heart, and they're not lying, is that, or misrepresenting, but they are misguided, I guess, Tracy, is that we'll be able to finish that field at Friday at 4. Well, if the moon, the stars, and everything on the planet aligns, it'll be done at Friday at 4. In no other situation would it go. Does anything ever go perfectly? The other thing is, these are the people that will overpromise and underdeliver. Yes. So they it's interesting, they come across with a lot of confidence, but they like to be liked. And so if I was to say something to you, Tracy, that I might get a negative feedback, I might stretch the truth, exaggerate so that I will get acceptance from you and says, yeah, we'll get you that lotus seed by Wednesday. And you know the truck's not coming Wednesday, it's coming Thursday. So I'm just going to say, well, late Wednesday, early Thursday, really not a difference. Or the other thing is, because relationships are so oriented for them, they might say to you, okay, we'll see you at 3. And then they come out of their coffee appointment or lunch with their friend. They see another friend. They say, oh, Jack, how you doing? And next thing you know, 30 minutes has gone by and I'm late for that meeting with Tracy. So they're the ones that tend not to have an orientation around time.
You silence the doubters. You get the best tools. You work with the right people. You look to the future and bust through.
Okay.
The last dimension is interpersonal harmony. So interpersonal harmony, their orientation is really they're introverted, nonverbal, and people-oriented. Interesting enough, they're more people-oriented than any of the other 4 dimensions. And the reason being is that it's in deference and service of others. So they love to support, they love to serve. A lot of interpersonal harmony people are in caregiving or support roles. It's not that they can't be in leadership roles, but they love to be in the support role for your goals to assist you. So, they might be nurses, they might be counselors, they might be assistants of some sort. And introverted means, what we mean by that again, is they defer to what the environment asks of them. They're nonverbal, meaning they don't have a lot of language about it, and it's people-oriented in the service of people. They care about people. They're the most empathetic out of all the group. They actually live in the now, so they're the best listeners out of the 4 dimensions as well. That's why they're great counselors, because they can be in the moment and listen to what Tracy has to share as part of our conversation, rather than going forward or back in the moment. The other thing that's interesting with them is they really dislike, and they're actually biologically wired to have the most sensitivity towards people's feelings and emotions at any given moment. They can walk into a room, never been in the room before, and if there's tension in the room, they'll feel it, they'll sense it. It actually, if it's a family argument, it can actually make them physically ill. So one of the challenges for interpersonal harmony individuals, because they like harmony and they dislike conflict, they potentially will avoid conflict or difficult discussions just because. And so they'll stuff it. Now, even though they tend to be the nicest people, don't be deceived. Interpersonal harmony people invented the word sabotage.
Really?
Passive aggressive. And the reason being they're stuffing it, and they're not saying anything to you, and they're angry and they're livid with you, but they don't have what we call the extroversion to speak out. So one of the needs for interpersonal harmony people is assertiveness. to be able to stand in their own space and say no when they mean no. So my mother has a lot of interpersonal harmony in her profile. And I remember I have 2 brothers. So there's 3 brothers growing up and a sister. And we would never clean our room. Says, you guys, why don't you clean up your room? Well, we knew if we didn't do it, she'd always do it for us. So, so she never would just stand her ground. Mom, why don't you just say no and not clean our room? Well, I can't stand it if you don't do it. So they can kind of get into this victim role. So again, they care for you. They're very sensitive. But the challenge for interpersonal harmony people is that you cannot let that interpersonal stress into your body, because you will get sick, you will get ill, it will affect your immune system quickly. And when other people are fighting, it affects you as a third party. Even though you are not there, it actually will go right into the soul of who you are and affect you negatively. So all of us are blends of these 4 dimensions. That's just a highlight reel. I cover that in depth in the book, and you get the details in the report as well. But knowing that, one of the things we say is, taking assessment's not enough. Is that you then need to become a student of style, a student of yourself and who you are, and a student of others, just as you would on any other practitioner for any purpose on any farming or agricultural business. If it's from finance and you're giving loans out as a credit union to, you're growing wheat, or you have dairy, or you have beef, or whatever it is, or you're a farrier, it doesn't matter, is that now you can be a student of people just as you are a student of your profession.
That's life, isn't it? That is what I enjoy doing. And you know what? More and more the last couple of years, as I work with people and even my family, I'm getting so much, you can probably guess what personality type I am. I'm getting so much traction and being able to step back and go, okay, my mom is exactly like your mom. My dad is this. And just backing Tracy off a little bit, right?
Well, and now then the other thing is that, of course, I've been fortunate to be around an individual called Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, who wrote the New York Times bestseller Triggers, but he also wrote the book What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And Marshall's now retired as a coach. He was the #1 executive coach in the world. And he said, and this is, has people watched this, there are some situations where you can't control other people's responses. No. So you can do all of this work, and in the end, you can only do what you can do. So an example is, Marshall talks about an amazing student who left her home from India and then, started to travel the world, was working out of New York, and then, flying to Europe. So she goes back to sort of a high school reunion in India. I don't know if it was Mumbai or wherever it was. And she started to really share with her friends her life and what she was doing. She wasn't, being boastful or anything. She says, well, we were in Amsterdam, and then we're over at Brussels, and I was in London, and then we're coming back to New York, and these are the things we're doing with our firm. It's really exciting. After the dinner, her friend pulled her aside and says, who do you think you are? To be so arrogant and be self-centered and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And one of the things that happens is that a lot of times people anchor who Tracy is, who Tracy was 20 years ago, who Ken was 30 years ago. And the reality is that if they haven't grown, if they haven't come with you, if you've gone into a different space and you have family members that you're not working with, but you've grown and they haven't, then just leave it alone. So the next time that she came back with this, back to India for her travels and meet with her friends, they said, how's it going, Ken, on your travels or whatever? I said, well, we've been traveling a lot into Europe, and we're really busy in the office, and it's been a really good position for me. How about you? And so you just, a short clip, and then you leave it alone, and it's gone. I remember a family member said to me after I got my doctorate degree, he says, Ken, we're never calling you doctor. You don't deserve it. And so what happens is that you have to stand in your own space and who you are. Personality is part of it, but then you have all these other factors that are going around it. So part of why you want to know personal style and why you want to know it from everybody else, how can we honor people and their strengths? How can we know who we are? And then there are some words that we use. How can I be intentional? How can I be deliberate? How can I be a student? All of these sort of active tense words to get to know who I am, get to know who you are, and then we can be way more productive as a team, way more engaged. In some cases, this ability to say no is, I need to kind of leave the farm. I need to leave this business because it's not a fit for me. Man, the pressure internally for me as the firstborn male, third generation on the dairy farm to leave, and I'm mostly extroverted, and I'm going to give you that definition here in a second. It was very difficult because the cultural pressures to stay, the cultural expectations to stay. So when we were doing our work with the auto industry, I remember a friend of mine who was the general manager of this dealership, and he was from an Asian culture from Hong Kong, and he stayed as the general manager at the dealership for over a decade, and he says, Ken, I hate my job. This is why you're here. So, well, culturally, I'm expected to stay. I'm the eldest male in our family, and this is what I'm doing. And he says, but I hate my job. And I said, well, what would you be doing if you weren't here? I said, I'd be in the arts. I'd be in theater. I'd be acting. I said, oh, that's the same as a general manager of an auto dealership. What's interesting, though, not that I was suggesting he would be disrespectful to his culture, but he really hadn't taken care of himself or articulated it. He had a lot of interpersonal harmony in his profile. So he deferred to the environment. He didn't sort of take charge of himself. He didn't speak what was really going on emotionally and his interests and hold his own space. But 2 years later, his father sold the business without his knowledge to another party, without him being involved, and he was out of a job.
Oh.
So in a lot of cases, we do the right thing by the family, but the wrong thing by us, and then everybody pays the price longer term with it. Now, I want to give you a short definition of our model. Where did we come with this? One of the reasons we created the personal style indicator, we thought that many of the other tools were doing a disservice in the marketplace. And so there's Myers-Briggs, which has this extroversion and introversion, which in our model has nothing to do with people. And we think it was doing a disservice to people. And then there were other ones like DISC or True Colors, which we would say would just be more of a party game and not deep enough and understanding enough for individuals. So we created a model, and I just want people to envision this, if you are listening to it or watching this, is that behavioral action and affective expressive people in our model are extroverted. So I've alluded to it already, is extroversion as a person's orientation to the environment. They see the environment as an opportunity to be influenced, to be told what to do, and to engage it so I feel alive. Introverted individuals, interpersonal harmony, cognitive analysis, see the environment to be more careful, to be more cautious. The environment tells them something to do, and they tend to respond and react rather than act on the environment. So then the environment is sort of shaping what I'm going to do or what I'm not going to do. And where this comes out of is the research that Ising did about 60 years ago on the reticular activating system, which is the nervous system at the base of our brain. Not that we would do a live analysis on your brainstem, Tracy, but the reality is that people that are highly extroverted actually have less nerve fibers at the base of their brain, and the people that are introverted have more nerve fibers. So let's say, if both of us, one highly introverted, one highly extroverted, are witnessing the same event, then the introvert is taking in more data, more input. The extroverted person is taking in less. That's why the extroverted person has more resilience and more stress capacity, because all the barrage of input is not affecting them. So what happens to a computer hard drive when it's full? It crashes, right? So the introverted individuals, their hard drive, their personal sort of hard drive, you're taking in more data, fills up quicker. And so that's why they will withdraw more. That's why they will have less physical capacity. So I might have a lot of behavioral action in my profile. And then my judgment of people's physical capacity to work on the job is based on what I could do. And other people, just their system will break down quicker. And so we're not judging fairly. The other thing that happens with many of the other tools is that many of us are balanced in our introversion and extroversion. There's some that are extreme extroversion, some extreme introversion, but there's a very high percentage of people that are balanced. So if you take a Myers-Briggs, you're ENTJ or INTJ, you're one or the other. But what if I'm right in the midline? And so neither are true for me. So in our model, we actually allow people to be balanced. Now, the next continuum, which most people understand and get, is people and tasks. So that was proved, 50 years ago with Kenneth Blanchard's work, is that some people are more relationship-oriented and some people are more task-oriented. And again, we sit on a continuum. Some people are extreme people. Some people are extreme tasks, and there's some people that are midline. So listening to me, you think, Ken, are you people or are you task? I'm actually midline. I'm in the middle. My verbal and nonverbal, which is the next continuum, is what we mean by this is the behavioral action and interpersonal harmony are nonverbal, meaning they'd rather do it than talk about doing it, and they don't need a lot of language to communicate concepts or to be understood. Affective expressive and cognitive analysis need more language. So both spoken and verbal, or verbal and written, is the different concepts of that. So have you ever sent an email, Tracy, to somebody, and all it really needs is okay, and they send you like 4 pages? And then have you sent an email to somebody, has 5 separate questions that you're going to do for the interview? Could you respond to each one of these? And then they say okay. So okay to what? What are you talking about? So again, it's not a right or wrong, but a lot of times this starts to describe behavior. We use this model, we don't have time in this show, to teach other people how to read other people and who they might be in just a few minutes. Because people are constantly leaving us clues on who they are, what they need, but we're not paying attention. And in fact, we don't even know what to look for. So if I know what I'm looking for, if you're leaving clues, we simply ask this question: is this person being extroverted or introverted? Are they trying to tell the environment what to do? Is the environment telling them what to do? Are they people-oriented or are they task-oriented? Are they verbal or are they nonverbal? And those start to leave us clues. And then we can take all the narrative out of the 4 dimensions and start crossing that over with that, and then that's again leaving us clues. And so what we're doing here is we're really honoring the relationship by making it matter. If I don't do this, then what you're saying is relationships don't matter. Now, I'm not trying to be judgmental in that tone, but it's really the sin of omission. So here's the other side. When we think about behaviors, everybody thinks about what we do. So when Brenda and I, my wife Brenda and I, we've been married nearly 30 years at the time of this taping. We were both 32 when we got married. And so we're both independent souls, and she's a teacher by profession. And so we bought a townhouse here about an hour out of Vancouver, and the kitchen overlooked an open carport. And of course, I had the spot down the street. Brenda had the one that was the covered area, right? Because I'm the good guy. I'm just messing with you. So she was teaching English as a second language at the local university. We've been married for about 3 months. She pulls into the carport around 9 o'clock at night. I'm sitting at the table reading something, I don't remember what. She gets out of the car, her arms are full of books, and then she comes through the front door and she's mad with me. Why is that? Because I didn't get up and open the door, right? Now, no hate. I'm trained now. But the point is that was I sitting at the table and says, let's see if I could offend my new bride. Let's see if I could just tick Brenda off. No, I wasn't thinking that. So it was the sin of omission. So what we don't do can equally cause people to erode our credibility, or our credibility to erode with them, as much as what we do. So I didn't get up. I didn't deal with it. Example, let's say I have a fair amount of interpersonal harmony as the farm owner, and my kids are fighting. And all I do is I avoid the conflict. I don't deal with it. Or maybe I'm a larger organization. I have a toxic employee. And so I decide to just ignore it. Now, your new policy is you have a no policy, and your credibility is being eroded because you're not doing anything about it. So that is an example of the sin of omission, where our personal style is affecting us on both sides of the ledger. So maybe, give you an example, we just had a mini workshop, a virtual workshop for an individual that owns a painting company. This is this blue-collar group that we're part of, right? And painting, electricians, plumbers, whatever. And he said to me, Ken, the personal style indicator has saved the relationship between me and my administrator. He said, because I was always this entrepreneur, going hard, direct. I would listen to her, but I wouldn't listen to her. It was transactional versus taking a breath and letting her explain what was going on. And if she had emotions, giving her space for those emotions. And she said to me, listen, I hated your guts. And if you hadn't taken this personal style indicator and I hadn't, and we hadn't grown to understand each other, then I would have quit. And so that is an example of when a lot of times people think that you woke up this morning to offend me. No, we just are wired that way. And if we don't have that consciousness, then I can't do anything about it. So we used to have a counseling division in our company. And so you'd work with couples. And usually couples don't come to see counselors if they're having a great time.
Nope.
So we always made it a requirement that the couples had to complete the personal style indicator as their first visit, because they have this negative energy that they're directing at each other. And we wanted to redirect the energy to this piece of paper or to this online assessment, whatever it is, to take away the focus from each other into this internal thing. Let's just pick on the personal style indicator. Said, okay, no, Ken is like that. He didn't get up this morning to try to be inattentive or not be emotional or not being feeling. He's just driven by getting things done. It wasn't yes, he needs to be responsible for how I'm feeling, but it's just not something that comes natural for him. And so he needs to work on it. So let's just help him. On the other hand, you're easily offended by the fact that Ken didn't say anything, so you've taken it personally. You need to kind of let go of that. One of the steps that we teach in building relationships with each other, actually it's 3 steps. Translating is reading others or understanding others. The second one I've just mentioned briefly, but we call it suspending. And this is the hardest thing, Tracy, in the planet to do. And Dr. David Burns wrote the book Feeling Good. In that, and what it is, it's really a psychologist book on how we manage our emotions, and that nobody makes you angry unless you let them. Right. So what he says in his book is that nobody has ever offended you. You have owned every bit of irritation, every bit of anger, every bit of offense has come from you internally. Now, I'm not saying what the person did is okay, but your reaction is always your choice.
Yes.
So we talk about, are you in charge of your style, or is your style in charge of you? And your style is not an excuse for your behavior. So just because I have affective expressive in my style doesn't mean that I have permission to be late. Just because I have cognitive analysis doesn't mean I have permission to be a critical spirit. Just because of the interpersonal harmony doesn't mean that I have permission to sabotage you and to, withdraw and not say what I'm thinking. Just because I'm behavioral action doesn't mean I could be rude and impatient with you. So everybody that's watching and listening to this has stuff. It just is. Welcome to the human condition. But what if I could just mitigate that, lower that, soften that, understand that, and just come to the table and say, listen, I'm feeling misunderstood. And the old golden rule, treat other people like you want to be treated is actually incorrect. The
Sure.
platinum rule, which Tony Alexander came up, which was treat other people the way they want to be treated. So even for me and my family, and I'd say most of them probably won't see this, is that I'm misunderstood because I'm the person with the most amount of extroversion in my family. So remember what extroversion is. Person that wants to be in charge and tell the environment what to do. I don't get the word can't. I don't understand the word can't. If somebody says no means maybe means yes. I don't even fathom it. It's not even part of the fabric. I just don't think about it. But it's also what has made me so resilient to be able to overcome so many things that we've had in our businesses over the years to grow to where we're at now as a company. Not right, not wrong, it's just different. Now, the same thing, one of my brothers has cognitive analysis that's higher than just about anybody. That's why he was the amazing mechanic. He could split a tractor, rebuild the engine, never went to school to be a mechanic. But he just had, not only did he have interest in mechanics, but he had the attention to detail to do it phenomenally. So he hated it. If I ever went on the chopper and I didn't grease it before we did the next day, he was mad with me because maintenance is done this perfect way. I was just, let's go cut, right? Yeah. So he was probably right. I was probably wrong, but that's what was driving him in what he was doing. Not right, not wrong. But back then we didn't know these things. We didn't understand these things as far as how we were interacting.
That was so much good stuff. And all the examples you just gave, I'm sure there's people in our audience just picking that out, because take one family. There could probably be all four of those main styles in there, and imagine trying to relate to the others. So I think, to me, Ken, this work, your assessment, should be mandatory for anybody getting married. And honestly, let's take this way, way, way earlier in life. This stuff should be taught in schools.
Oh, absolutely. I believe actually we have a version that we use. I used to be a school board chair.
Okay.
And so we did it for our kids' class when they were grade 8. So kids get it. They understand it. When we did this, and then we create what we call style corrals, and one of my son, Tim's friends said, "Oh," to the other girl in the class, "now I know why I don't like you."
Yeah.
And they were kind of kidding, but she was this never shut up person in the class, right? That had this expressive side, that was not in charge of stuff. He was more task oriented. Says, will she ever be quiet? Yes. Right? And there's this chatterbox in there. So one of the things we're trying to teach people is to be in charge of self. So true story. So my son doesn't mind telling this story. So he's fairly expressive, but he's also extroverted. So he's affective expressive, and behavioral action is his two primary dimensions that are above what we call our midline. So he's a grade 8 student. He's getting close to 6 feet. He's growing, puberty, all these things. So his profile is affective expressive and behavioral action. His teacher, who is new, it's their first year, is cognitive analysis in interpersonal harmony. So what does a C teacher want? Compliance, listen to the rules, do what I say. What does an expressive 13-year-old boy going through puberty who's nearly 6 feet want to do? Talk to his friends, be verbal. And so I remember when he came home, he says, Dad says, if she says one more word, I'm going to pound her. So what he would say, that was his emotional state. He was so frustrated. And every time that she wanted him to comply, he would act out even more. Yeah. And so then that frustrated her. So here I am, the school board chair, doing a coaching session between the two of them. And then Tim came home about a month later and says, Dad, it's a great thing that happened. I said, what was that? I've learned how to shut up. And so part of even somebody in grade 8, grade 9, is that we can start moving into this self-management. And then the goal is to get into from self-awareness to self-management to self-mastery. So that any given moment, I'm awake and aware of what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, what I need, and how I can respond. Now, a couple more stories before you have to wrap for your time and your show is, I remember I wrote my MBA paper, and was one of my last papers. It was over 40 pages. And I pushed the delete button and I wiped it out. And I hadn't printed it, I hadn't saved it, and I had to start over. Whoa. And one of the things I could have done is acted in anger, got really upset, but that wasn't going to help me to redo it. A lot of times, people that are watching and listening to the show, you practice anger response to inanimate objects. Stop doing that. Stop kicking the combine. Stop throwing the lawnmower across the yard, because now you're practicing. You're teaching your system to have an angry response to something you didn't go. You're a pouting child.
Yes. Then
take that. When you do that, you take that into your relationships. Mm-hmm. The more that you can exercise self-control and self-management, the more you can take that into your relationships. All of us have triggers. All of us have hot buttons. And, if you have a significant other, they know exactly what they are, and they can, so we can actually lose it. And the thing is that when you lose self-control, there's a study done by Dr. Gottman. When we go over 100 beats per minute, non-athletic, we are no longer rational. So when you lose it, when you lose self-control, you will say and do things with family members, especially in a family farm or any kind of small business, and you will say and do things that you will regret forever.
Yes.
Because you will burn bridges. So one of our clients we work with is law enforcement. And so Dr. Mitch Shavidi, a partner, co-author of another book with me, teaches law enforcement. What is the most dangerous situation for all law enforcement to go into? Is domestic dispute. Why is it?
Yeah.
These are normal people that might be the VP at this company down the street, but they have lost it emotionally, and they'll say and do things, and they might even hurt the officer or multiple other individuals, and then you take that person off, and then the other spouse will attack that person because they're completely unpredictable. So our job is to make sure that we manage self. And I'm not saying what they did was okay and that it's appropriate, et cetera, but I need to manage self so that I can have this conversation. You ever been at a grocery store, Tracy, where a 4-year-old is taking out a parent? And the 4-year-old's acting up. The parent is no longer suspended. Their heartbeat's gone over 100 beats per minute. It says, Ken, if you keep acting like that, I'll leave you here. You're not going to leave a 4-year-old in the grocery store, but that's how they feel. And so the child who is 4 already knows you're taken out. They have no idea from a psychology point of view, but intuitively they know, I got mom and dad. Just, okay, you are no longer in control. I control you.
Amen. Yes.
Yeah. So as a parent, I want to be in charge of that. And that's true for all of our relationships. And guess what? In the first part of my life, not very good at that. And I'm still working on that. And even though I've taught this 1,000 times, I need it as much as anybody else to be able to do it. So my encouragement is you're never there. You're constantly working on it. You're constantly developing it. And it is releasing. It's powerful. And if you're open to it and not closed to it, it can transform your life.
I love it. Quick question for you before we wrap up. So I'm going to guess one of the main objections somebody has out there. I'm feeling the brain vibes. They go, this sounds interesting. I'm going to do it. But my dad will never take this test. Can you speak to that?
Well, number one is do it for yourself. And then, so do it for yourself. And you're right, my dad didn't take it. So then what I tried to do is use the information that we teach in the book to read dad, to know what he is without the fact that he took the assessment, and do the best you can. In the end, actually, the only person you control is self. Yep. We'd like to think that we control other people, but we really don't. And I get it. And that frustration is real. It's there. And that's some of the work that Elaine does as well, is just to work with family communications and open up. And what I'm really thankful for is the younger generation are more open to this. Yes. And the older generations, and not to date myself, but the people that are, and I'm not trying to be ageism, but when you get in the older generation, this was not traditional. To be collaborative, to be communicative, where you're open to it. But take responsibility in charge of yourself, and you bring the best self. And even in marriage counseling, we do this. Everybody wants to change their spouse. Yep. No. The only person you can be in charge of is change yourself. If you can love on that other person in spite of what they do, guess what? You'll be surprised in how they change. But the only person you can change is yourself. So own yourself, own your space, be confident in who you are.
This is fantastic, Ken. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for sharing with us. We are going to wrap up, but I want to get you to kindly direct our audience. Where can they take the assessment? Where can they get your book? How can they connect with you?
Okay, so we have a couple of different sites. So the main site that has all the assessments that you can go on 24/7 to purchase an online tool, and you could be taking it 3 minutes after this interview, is crgleader.com. CRG and then the word leader, one word, .com. We actually have a free gift for your listeners, if you recall, Tracy, where we're going to give away my purpose book as an e-download to everybody from my speaker site. Now that's Ken Keis, KenKeis.com/farm. I don't know how I came up with that. I mean, that's a hidden URL. And then my book, Why Aren't You More Like Me, is in the CRG site. You can purchase it there and get it delivered or hard copy. And the Personal Style Indicator is also online. And then we have a whole digital dashboard. So we keep the results. You can create a little account and have the whole family take it and share it and pass it on and read each other's report with permission and have some fun with it. We don't want to be brutal about this. Let this be a release and have some fun and enjoyment and understanding rather than any kind of burden. It's really quite the opposite.
I love it. And what we'll do is we'll include all those links in the show notes below. So thank you so much, Ken. I love this work. It is life-changing. And if you're in the audience and you agree, like it, share it, get it out there so other farmers can hear this great wisdom that Ken shared. Thank you, Ken. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you in the audience. See you next week. Bye, guys.
You silence the doubters. You get the best tools. You work with the right people. You look to the future and bust through.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.